Hey everyone, welcome to the Empty Cup podcast. I'm your host, Ian Carlin. Glad you could make it, where you're talking about the issues in martial arts where traditional and modern martial arts collide, and we dissect what's left over. Today, again on the show, we have Shad. He's rejoined us for this broadcast, but we only have him on audio, and we download most of this stuff audio. We just put the video up as kind of an extra bonus for people who kind of want to see us. But you won't be seeing Shad today because he is babysitting as well as trying to make it on the program. So if his baby starts to cry and he has to leave soon, we will forgive him for that. But we have some interesting topics to talk about today. Hey, Shad, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm interested in this. Let's just jump right into it. I'm interested in this Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor fight that's going on, and listening to a lot of the buzz as far as that's concerned. There's always the outliers, but I'm hearing a consensus, and it's a consensus that I agree with, but I don't want to like spoil it here yet anyway. Before we hear what you have to say, what do you think about this fight?
Um, I think Floyd Mayweather's gonna mangle. Uh, he's gonna kill him.
I
I mean,
think so too.
Floyd's one of the greatest boxers of all
Yep.
times, greatest defensive boxers. I don't even think McGregor would beat. I mean, there's so many boxers that could beat McGregor in his same weight class.
Uh-huh.
Let alone Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather's like there's no way he'll even touch him. Even people say like McGregor hits really hard, which is true, but it's
Hmm.
not like he hadn't had Canelo and he hadn't had
It's not.
Pacquiao, and he
Yeah.
fought he fought Marquez. He's had a lot of guys that could hit hard that try to fight him. They couldn't touch him either. So I don't see how this is more of a circus.
Yeah.
It's not a real fight. It's
Nobody has anything to lose really in this fight. I mean, everybody's going to be making a ton of money. People are going to. I mean, I'm going to watch it. I mean, it's good. Fans are going to be happy to see it. Uh, you know, the if you're a Conor McGregor fan, which I am, uh, you're probably going to be a little upset that he loses. But I mean, pretty much you're going to see a show. I think everyone's gonna see there's a lot of talk about the fact that it's a boxing 12 rounds and whether or not Conor McGregor has the capacity to be able to do that. Have you heard anything about that?
well, I definitely think he could he I don't think endurance would be an issue given his age and what shape he's in. But
You don't think endurance?
he's just not good. He's just playing on Floyd's turf. I mean, it's not even really be like it would be like Floyd going into an MMA match with Connor. The same thing. Connor would just make why it's going to be a boxing match
Hey, Shad,
because they'll make more money.
you're breaking up a little bit there, buddy. I don't know if you can reconnect your audio or whatever. Say a couple things here because you're breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sound pretty
Okay.
clear.
Yeah, I mean they're picking boxing because that's where the money is, really. I mean,
Yeah.
Dana White does not pay his guys. He does not pay them even close to what boxers make. I mean,
Yeah.
they make thousands of dollars a fight. Floyd Mayweather
Mhm.
makes, $100 million. I mean, so it's for Conor McGregor to even make $1 million would be a lot in a
Oh
UFC
yeah, yeah.
fight, let alone, the money that he could get from this fight. So you're right,
Right.
he has everything to gain because the amount of money he's going to
Yeah.
get for this fight, the biggest
But
payday
I
he'll ever
think
get.
but I think that Conor McGregor has a better chance winning in boxing than Floyd Mayweather would win in MMA. So, for example, if like I give this like maybe like a 90%. There's a possibility that Connor could win. It's a small possibility. It's like, you know, a 10% possibility, maybe even a 6% possibility that Connor could win if he just comes in and just maybe just knocks him out or something like that, lucky shot or something like that. But like if it was the other way around, if Floyd Mayweather was going into MMA, there's no chance. It's a 0 chance win. It's like 99% that he would lose. There's no way that someone like that, a boxer, is going to. We've seen this over and over again. We did that with the what's his name, John James or something like that. Was like this was like 10 years ago, maybe like 07 or something like that. Do you remember that? Is a boxer, James White, or I can't remember. Name's escaping me right now. But he followed Dana White around for a while, and he was a boxer, and he was like, "Oh, I want to fight," and Dana White finally said, "Okay, you can fight," and he got in there, and he just got taken to the ground and wiped out the first round.
Yeah, I
So
don't know which boxer you're talking about, but I mean, a lot of them have. I mean, I know James Toney has. I know Riddick Bowe has fought in MMA, and they just got mangled.
yeah, James Toney, I think that was it.
He got
Yeah.
mangled yeah, because it's a different, totally different venue. You know, if you
Yeah.
boxers are specialists, and so in that particular thing, they put all their energy into that one skill set. That's not McGregor's skill set. Where an MMA fighter has to have a broader skill set than a boxer does. So yeah, Floyd would of course get mangled in an MMA fight. He doesn't know what to do on the ground. You know, if Floyd were to turn his shoulder and do the Philly shell, that's a perfect takedown. You just take him down right when he did that. So it wouldn't translate into MMA at all. His fighting style wouldn't translate. On the other hand, I do think like Mike Tyson would have a chance in an MMA fight because he was facing his opponents. He didn't do that.
He'd square up more.
Yeah, he didn't turn his shoulder and chin away from people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Tyson would be more dangerous.
I think Tyson would be more dangerous too. I think that's because of his shorter arms too, because so he'd like square up more.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't have the reach, so he had to kind of, you know, use both arms, so he'd square up more. I don't know. That's just a thought that I had. It occurred to me, so I don't know if it's true or not.
Another thing is I don't really know if there are really any phenomenal boxers that are elite MMA guys right now. I mean, you know,
What do you mean?
Like guys, they say like the Diaz, they say Diaz brothers are good boxers. Those guys are not good boxers in a boxing ring. Those guys would get mangled in a boxing ring. They might be good boxers for MMA, but they wouldn't be good boxers, you know, by boxing standards. You know, so
yeah. So they're good boxers for MMA standards, but they're not good boxers for well, the thing is you know, these sports they develop and then they have rules that develop out of them because of the context in which they're developed. So for example, you know, boxers have these bigger gloves, and as a result of having these bigger gloves, you know, their defensive measures are mostly like dodging and weaving and covering. They don't have like a lot of like handwork defensively, and that's not necessary. And the problem is that translates over and I've even heard Joe Rogan talk about this before, about how there needs to be a little bit more on the defensive issue in MMA, because they're trying to defend just like boxers, but they only have 4-ounce gloves, and it's not working. It doesn't work as well. You don't have gloves to cover your face. They're too small, and so there are other things that need to be developed as a result of that. But then those other things that need to be developed that could work in MMA would not work with those gloves on, and I know this almost firsthand because I go to an MMA gym, and sometimes they'll let me practice with the 4-ounce gloves, but then other nights, like they want me to wear the boxing gloves, and it has severely limited my my defenses. Wearing the boxing gloves, my hands just aren't as quick. Anyway, but I mean, we could talk about that a little bit, about whether or not, because basically what I use, particularly when I fight out of the pocket, there's a couple things you can use. Okay, when you're fighting out of the pocket, and somebody's coming in at you with punches, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, that kind of a thing. There's a couple things you can do. You can dodge and weave, which I don't have hardly any experience at. I'm not good at it at all. Or you can cover, which really, in my opinion, covering is like, I don't know, it's just like, I can hit somebody on their arms just as easily as I can hit them in their face, give their arms a beating. Doesn't really matter much to me. Or I can use some of my sows, and that's actually what I use when I am fighting, is I use a lot of sows, and people can look at that I have a couple of sparring sessions over on the Ronin JKD channel at YouTube, and you can see me sparring MMA. Some light sparring. It's not like anything heavy, but you can see that I use my sows as a defensive measure. Anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of it could get you hurt. I think Poxow would work. I wouldn't do Bongsow.
Oh, no. Okay.
Or Lopsow or
no, yeah,
Handsow.
Okay, so Lopsow's out. Lopsow's just it does not work, especially against somebody who's gonna, be pulling back. That doesn't work at all. But believe it or not, Bongsow works pretty good, like a modified Bongsow, and it's almost like that. What's the name of that technique? Where the shoulder comes up.
Shoulder roll.
The shoulder roll. Yeah, the shoulder roll from boxing. It works almost on that same principle, especially when I'm standing in kind of a more of a boxer stance. So you got the jab coming in, pock the jab, the cross comes in. Instead of doing a shoulder roll, I just put the elbow, kind of like the elbow up. It's a modified Bongsow. I mean, it's not like, if some traditional Wing Chun guy saw me do that, he'd probably say that's a crappy Bongsow, and for the most part it is. But it actually works. It works fairly well. The Bongsow. Now the Lopsow doesn't, and the Tan Sow doesn't work at all. But
if you did it the traditional way, you'd get hurt. Especially Wing Chun guys, they leave their chin up.
Uh-huh.
You can't leave your chin up and lean back like that. You're gonna get knocked out. You're talking about more of like tucking your chin and kind of rolling away. That's
rolling away, but I do the bong. I roll like so. So like like if I'm doing a jab across, I'll pock the jab and do the bong for the cross, and it works. That bong works fairly well, but there's no way I'm going to do a bong to a Lopsow to a strike, because the hand just moves too fast.
Right,
it moves too fast.
But this combination, it's going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, Wing Chun was designed to fight other Kung Fu styles, and if you look at traditional Asian martial arts styles, you don't see a lot of pulling the punches. It's more they throw the punch on a single beat and they leave it out.
Right.
If you notice.
Right.
So yeah, then a Bongsow definitely works, but boxing, you pull the punch back and you throw them in flurries, combinations, fakes. You know? So yeah, I don't think a lot of that stuff would hold up.
No. The Bongsow, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on that. I use it all the time in class, and I use it all the time
No, I'm
against
not
people
saying
who are
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying if you did it the traditional way. I'm not saying that the
oh
way you're doing it isn't working. I'm saying you're pressure testing it, so you had to modify it. I'm saying if you
yeah
try to do it the way we were taught in class, you would get mangled.
yeah. I have to agree with you on that. So maybe we didn't disagree as much as I thought we did. The gong sao works too for uppercuts. So I like using the gong sao, and then the bu sao works as well for hooks. And that's kind of what I use to fight in the pocket. Other than stepping back, if I'm coming in and I'm trying to not to just back up, back up, back up, which happens quite a bit, more than I'd like to admit. But if I'm really trying to sit and fight out of the pocket, I'll use these, I'll use the sow set. I'll use my hands, basically, is what I'm saying. I won't rely on covering, and I won't rely on dodging and weaving. And it's just I don't. I'm not good at dodging and weaving. I'm not good at it. It's a skill set that I've never developed. I mean, maybe I would be good at it if I tried to develop it, but I, I it's
Yeah,
no way it's going to work for me. I don't know.
yeah. I got my
So,
baby on
and
my
it,
stomach now, so it's
okay.
just in case you hear some goo goo yang, that's my baby.
Well, I was hearing it there. I was trying to talk over it.
Yeah.
But
One thing, I know you talked, was your last podcast with Sean?
yeah, I think it was. And the last podcast was with Sean.
Okay, so you guys talked about that supposed Bruce Lee fight, which is bullcrap. He wasn't fighting, which you already hit on. But there
Right.
was another portion to that demo that it's been spread around online, and Vic Moore's he made this claim a while ago that the tape was edited, and that when
Yeah.
Bruce did the demo, he actually said, "Hey, Bruce," he said, "Let me now do my punches on you and see if you can stop them." And he said he tagged Bruce several times, and the crowd was oohing and ahhing.
Yeah.
So I thought, that it sounds crazy, but I'm not going to just dismiss it. Let me just investigate this. Because I
Hmm.
saw the interview. I talked to the guy who did the interview. That's the first thing I did. I asked him about it. And this guy's made several of these interviews about Bruce Lee not being a real fighter, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it sounds like he has an agenda, but I'm not going to just assume. I wanted to do more investigation. But through my research, I found that the tape, the original footage was owned by the Parkers, and they sold it to a film studio. And Vic Moore claims it was edited to make Bruce look good. And you can see that it has been edited. You can
Right.
see the tape has been edited.
What? Yeah. What tape hasn't been edited though? I mean, you know
Right,
what I
right.
mean. Especially if
That's
you're trying to.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's evidence, but he's saying it was edited out. But the problem with it, the biggest problem with it is if you have that many people in the audience, why haven't any of them come forward and validated his story?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I've seen some of those videos that here's somebody, Vic Moore is somebody who has everything to lose or look bad, at this. Of course, he can always cry editing, editing, and then, oh, I tried to hit Bruce Lee and I was able to hit him. But, where's the evidence? You can't have
Yeah,
yeah,
it's puzzling because Vic Moore was uh, an accomplished fighter. He was a great fighter at his time.
right,
He beat Joe Louis, he beat Mike Stone, he beat Chuck Norris. So it doesn't make sense to why he has to do that, but it just doesn't add up. And I've even talked to one of Bruce's students about it, and he said it didn't happen. So that was there. He said he was there. He said it didn't happen. So
who'd you talk to?
Well, I just on Facebook. I posted it, asked Steve Golden if
Uh-huh.
if it was true, and he said he was there, and it wasn't true. So, but it's just bizarre that this guy this age is
Right.
making up these stories. Like, what's the point? you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just a demo. It was like there was something to lose. Bruce did a speed test, and that was so humiliating that you got to make up some lie about that you actually beat Bruce.
Well, people want to save face all the time.
Yeah, they do, but which brings up another topic is you know with Bruce Lee fans. I think a lot of times they take it to the extreme with Bruce's abilities. Um,
Yeah, I could see that. Is there more you want to say on that? I mean, it's
well,
okay.
let me ask you: do you think he was a fighter? Do you think he was a fighter? He could go in the UFC right now and
Oh, well,
with Conor
but
McGregor.
you look at other, no, I mean, you look at other fighters of that era. Do you think they could survive in the UFC? I mean, I think like one of the most legit people out there is Chuck Norris. I mean, Chuck Norris is probably one of the most, I mean, he's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He, was a world champion at one time. I mean, but do I think that, I mean, as far as a legit fighter is concerned, do I think that he could today, or even in his prime, with his skill set, go in to an MMA fight? Oh, that would be hard. It would be hard to say, but I would bet, I would probably, as sad as it is to say, and as much as it is that I love Chuck Norris, I would probably bet against him. Now, if Chuck Norris trained MMA, if he said, I'm going to take this stuff and I'm actually going to gear it all towards the cage, I think he would do very well. And I think the same could be said of Bruce Lee or a JKD guy. You know, could could he have been great at MMA if he would have trained it? Yeah, but do I think that if I could, take a magical space capsule and, pick him up and say, hey, Bruce, you're fighting, Conor McGregor or somebody like that? No, I don't think so. And I hope I don't piss anybody off by saying that.
Well, you
But
will, but there's a lot of irrational people out there that.
but that doesn't mean that I don't think that if, and this was something that I actually wanted to talk about, and that is the world in which JKD was developed. The world in which JKD was developed influenced Jeet Kune Do. It influenced what he was interested in and what he was studying. Um, and if JKD was developed today, it would look I think it would look different. Anyway, what do you think? Tell me.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean,
Well, tell me what you were thinking about Bruce Lee, what you were going to say, and you were like, well, you weren't sure if you wanted to say it. You asked me first. So, what did you want to say about him being a fighter or whatever?
well, I think you hit it. I just think that people take it. On one end, you have people saying that he could beat anybody in any weight class. He could beat Mike Tyson. And on the
Yeah,
other end, you have people saying that he was just an actor. Um, uh, and I think both extremes are wrong. I mean,
no,
the
yeah, I think both.
fighters the
Yeah,
fighters that knew him, the guys like Joe Louis, Chuck Norris, Bob Wall, Gene LaBelle, these guys said he could have been a world class fighter if he wanted to. If he trained for
yeah,
it, he had the capacity to do that. But that's different than saying that he was invincible, because nobody's invincible. Even the best fighters aren't. They lose. Mike Tyson loses. Roy Jones Jr. loses. So
Anderson Silva. I thought he would never lose. I'm a
yeah,
big fan.
yeah. Anderson
Seriously.
Silva can lose.
I mean,
Anybody can lose.
he was probably one of the best fighters of all time.
Yeah.
in my opinion, is one of the best fighters ever. And yeah, I mean, eventually you lose. You can't win every fight. That's all there is to it.
Right.
Now, let's ask this question though. Do you think that Bruce Lee, if I dropped him into a street situation, um, could handle himself? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think he could. I mean, the guy was a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah,
He was incredibly fast by all accounts, and
yeah, he's
I mean,
incredibly.
Joe Louis had fought a lot of guys
Mhm.
and said Bruce is the fastest guy to ever stand in front of him. So
Right.
that's saying a lot. Because Joe Louis fought a lot of professional fighters, and I think he did fight one guy that did fight Tyson. So I mean, that's quite a compliment coming from someone who had his fighting experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think so. I think 100%. I think if you took Bruce Lee and the analogy that or the situation that I've talked about many times in the program, you took him and dropped him off in front of an ATM, and somebody came at him and said, "Hey, give me your money." I think the guy would be. I think the guy who asked for Bruce Lee's money would have been toast. Without a question. I don't. I think that too. So, and the thing is fighting average person and fighting a professional fighter are two different things. And I don't know if I talked about this yet on the program, but I actually did get to fight a professional MMA fighter. And I fight with a lot of the amateur guys there, and it's great. And sometimes I do well, sometimes I don't. And it's been a lot of fun. But there's a guy who's actually a professional MMA fighter at our school, um, and um, uh, and he beat the crap out of me. I mean, he literally just it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed at how well this guy was. I mean, he wasn't like in my weight category or anything like that. It's not like I would have, even if I was in MMA, it's not like I would have ever fought somebody like this. I mean, the guy's like 6'10", just muscled out but he is incredible, man. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like his timing was just, I mean, he basically could hit me anytime he wanted to. And so it's different to fight somebody who's an actual professional fighter than it is even just people who come in off the street and they want to fight. I've done that a lot too, where you're in class, and I don't know, you don't know how MMA classes are run, but basically, it's not like it's like a belt system or something like that where you've got your white belts and your yellow belts and your green belts or whatever. Basically, it's like two classes. It's like you've got the beginners over here and then the people who aren't beginners over here, and these people are all fighting and sparring and doing bag work and all this stuff, and you have this group of people over here who are just barely kind of learning like the correct way to do a hook punch, the correct way to do a kick, the correct way. They're just kind of learning that, but there isn't like this whole development. It's like either you're like 6 months to a year over in this beginner place, and then from then on, you're fighting. That's it. You go in and you spar, or you do bag work or something like that. But there have been plenty of people who've come in off the street who think they have something to prove, and they're like, okay, so it's like, okay, glove up, let's glove up, let's fight. Plenty of those kind of fights. But I'll tell you what, Shad, and anybody out there who's listening, this guy that I fought, who is a professional, he's had like 36 fights, and I think he's won like 30 out of the 36 professional fights that he's fought. He beat the crap out of me. It was seriously embarrassing.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. When you're talking about people that are elite, it's just a totally
Right,
different level. And I and and I
right, right.
and for Bruce, I don't think he ever fought anybody on that elite level. I think he fought guys on film sets that were. I mean, you even have pictures of some of the fights he had on Enter the Dragon with one of the guys on the set. The guy is puny. So I mean, you really can tell how good somebody is if you put them up against someone of equivalent skill. And I
Right.
don't think he ever fought, and he didn't need to. He wasn't training to fight people. He was. I'm not saying that Bruce needed to do that, but it's a big jump to say, well, yeah, he won a lot of street fights, therefore he could go in and be, a professional fighter, like a guy you said,
Yeah.
someone who's been in a lot of fights against other trained fighters. I think that's a totally different thing than a street fighter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Trained and semi-trained, whatever. It's a different world than a professional fighter. So I don't know. I mean, it was an experience that I'm glad that I had. But I've fought people, who come in again, off the street or whatever, and like they glove up or whatever. And there's been some of those people who really scare me. Some of it is just like, whoa, I would, even with all my experience, there are certain people who I would still hate to run into on the street, and it causes me to think about my skill set. And I've talked about this before, but the skill set that I develop is like dirty fighting. I mean, that is kind of what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for throat. I'm aiming for eyes. I'm aiming for groin. Now, I don't do that all the time or whatever, but when you meet somebody who comes in off the street and they're tough, you're thinking, oh my gosh, if I encountered this guy in real life, there would be, I wouldn't be able to sit here and box with them or something like that. I would definitely have to do something to give myself an advantage. But then there's always the opposite, that people say, well, that person could do something just as bad too. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of street fighting techniques are more theoretical than sport fighting techniques. Because sport fighting techniques have been tested over and over again, and street fighting techniques, a lot of them, where you've never jabbed out someone's eye before, but you have punched somebody, and you know what it's like when someone tries to take you down. You do that all the time, but you don't really have those scenarios happening on the street in class. They're hard to train for, so they're a lot more theoretical in nature.
Absolutely more theoretical. And then it's just like I said before, if you have to choose something, choose, and you're really looking for some something that's going to be effective in almost every situation, I would choose MMA, because it's pressure tested. You are pressure testing it. I'm not saying, it's one of those things. It's like MMA is a developing art, and people come in and they're outliers. They come in and things that you think didn't work will then work with somebody. So when MMA was first developed, it was just like, it was all ground. It was just like, well, I guess if you're going to be good at MMA, you have to know jiu-jitsu. That's all there is to it. But then, people started to be able to beat jiu-jitsu from their feet. And then you're like, okay, so I guess we have to learn boxing and kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. It's kind of, and then other people were saying, okay, but karate is totally out. Any type of karate work is completely out. And then you had, George St. Pierre and, people coming in and using karate and winning, or more karate techniques. Obviously, they're modified. So, I'm one of these people who's like, don't be afraid to explore new scenarios, but you have to pressure test them to find out whether or not they work. You have to pressure test. That's all there is to it. If you don't pressure test it, It's just theoretical. That's all there is to it.
Now, back to a question you asked about whether or not you asked earlier if would Bruce Lee develop JKD the same way if he was living in 2017 versus the 1960s?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's hard to say, but if you're looking at the principles of the art, the techniques he picked, I don't know why would he pick different ones. Why would you get any more efficient by using different techniques than he used? He went out and picked the most efficient techniques that was in line with his principles. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe he would be training more against, like, what if I encounter a JKD guy versus, how do I develop this to defeat the guys at his time period? Yeah. Maybe he would train it differently, but I don't necessarily think it would look different.
Okay, so here, let me throw a monkey wrench in this. I think that if JKD was developed today rather than back in the 60s, if Bruce Lee was born and, he is in his prime right now and he was, developing Jeet Kune Do, this is all just so speculative, but I would say that he probably would have given a lot more to groundwork on the front end rather than on the back end. So JKD in its original form has groundwork. Everybody knows this. There was, you can see him doing like crucifixes and things like that. And there were like some leg locks and things like that. But it was very underdeveloped, and it wasn't against live resistance. And you can hear Burton Richardson talking about this on Dudes of Kung Fu. I think that would have been one of the more, I think that would have been at least a factor in JKD. Because now what's happening is a lot of JKD people, including myself, are developing more groundwork in their JKD and making it part of their JKD curriculum. Where before 1993, the groundwork in JKD, if you went into a JKD school, the groundwork was either nothing or just a few simple moves. I don't even know if they had escape from mount. I didn't learn escape from mount when I was in JKD, and we did some ground. It was mostly about getting up or whatever. So anyway, I think that would have changed, but who knows?
Let's just analyze some of these principles. Like, why would the straight lead be different? Why would you need to make it different? Why would a non-telegraphic strikes need to be different? Economy of motion. If you're going to use economy of motion, would you change the strikes? I mean, he picked the most efficient movements for that, right? Interception. Would you start intercepting with different techniques? I think he picked the best techniques for interception. The 4 ranges of combat, that was included. The five methods of attack, would that change? Those principles are still the same. Centerline theory, how does that change? Those all stay the same. So if you're building an art on those principles and that's your blueprint, then I think you don't end up with a different looking art. Yeah, you're right. Maybe he does pay more attention to ground fight. I don't know. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah.
As far as the physical system that he developed, the stand-up, I don't see why that would look different. I don't see how Thai boxing would be more efficient. How is Thai boxing non-telegraphic? Or how is it more economical than a straight low kick, more of a sabat type kick? It's not. It's not more economical. It's a bigger motion. It's more telegraphed.
Well, there's even an argument to be made of would he have developed it at all? Would he have? I mean, actually, back then he saw a need for it because everybody was in their camps, and about the best thing you had to tell whether or not your martial art work was either a street fight, an unsanctioned street fight, which he was in with Wong Jack Man kind of a thing, and a couple others, or you know, full contact point fighting, or kickboxing. I mean, that was really it. You
Well,
know, nobody was combining these. Maybe wrestling. You know, maybe like a wrestling thing. Um,
boxing would have
uh,
been. Boxing didn't come around till a little later.
oh yeah,
Joe
boxing
Louis
for
pioneered
sure.
kickboxing. I
Yeah,
mean, during Bruce's era in the 1960s, when he was developing the art, it was point fighting or no touch sparring. Um,
right.
he ridiculed that. I mean, he believed
Yeah,
in the full contact, putting on headgear. So, um, but yeah, boxing was probably, he held that at a high regard by all accounts.
yeah.
Lots of evidence he held boxing at a high regard. But yeah, kickboxing wasn't even around till a little later.
Oh, it wasn't that? Am I messing up the time frame on that?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, all right. Well, I apologize for that. I apologize for that. But I'm just saying he was sitting here looking, going, well, what would actually work? That's why a lot of people think he's the father of MMA, or he's the father of reality-based martial arts, because he was the first. Well, I don't know if he was the first one, but he was, one of the first ones, and certainly one of the most popular ones to say, well, look, this guy does this, and it looks like it would work, and this guy does this and it looks like it would work, and this guy does this, and how are we going to let's develop something that actually works. So you know there's even a question of, in my mind, is if Bruce Lee were alive today, would he have even thought about developing JKD? Would he have just gone straight into MMA?
That's a great question, but I don't know. That's kind of like the chicken or the egg. If Bruce Lee really
Yeah,
started the movement of the MMA,
yeah,
and let's say he came into the future, well, with what he did in the past is what made the opportunity for MMA. So it's
right.
kind of a paradox.
It is a
Um,
paradox, and we're just going completely theoretical. I
that's a
do
good point.
think
I
that
don't know.
there,
I mean, maybe you would. I don't know. But
I do think that
but
there would be innovations into MMA. Like I was saying, training. Wow, messing up my words here. Sow training for MMA, I think is something that I really wish that more MMA people would open their mind to, because it's just another way to fight out of the pocket, that you don't necessarily have to dodge and weave, or just cover and take a beating on your arms. I really think that there is um, some some benefit that if people would do that, that it would work with MMA, that it would work in MMA. So, and again, is this like what, and I've said this like so many times, because you brought this up, like the last podcast we were on, and I think it's totally true. And that is, something like Chisao has been underestimated by legitimate fighters. And the reason why it's been underestimated by legitimate fighters is because you had a bunch of people overestimating it and
yeah,
thinking it's the measure of the fight. And because you got these people who just train Chisao and think it's the measure of the fight, they go out, they get their asses handed to them. So then you have this group of people who say, well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
right.
But they did the same thing with karate. They did the same thing with, well, that's not going to work. Karate's not going to work. But then you had people bringing karate in a pressure tested situation. And I think that the same could work with the sow training, and using like two hands at once. And some of these sows at least can be, um, they can be implemented. So we might see it. I don't know. It'll just take somebody who's brave enough to try it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I definitely think you're. I think you're right. You would figure out a way to make it work
Right.
if that's what you're going to do. You have to modify it. But
Yeah, well, you'd have to pressure test it. Just like karate doesn't work, as karate, in MMA. It's modified, it's pressure tested, and then you find out what it is about karate that works. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I actually have to get going now. I got my baby is made a mess.
All right. All right. Well, I appreciate you being with us on the program today, Shad. So if you need to head on out, and I'll go ahead and close the show out for everybody.
Yeah, I do. I gotta.
All right, man. Thanks for joining me today.
You bet.
All right. Okay. I'll put this up later. I'll get in contact with you a little bit later. Mm-hmm. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Empty Cup podcast. If you like what you heard, please share this on your favorite social media and do us a favor, write a review in iTunes. I would love to have this thing go wild, go public. So anyway, so do that for us. If you like the program, share it, write a review, and follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/The Empty Cup Podcast, and also on Twitter at Empty Cup Podcast. And if you want to hear my fighting tips and see me fight, sparring, and hear some of my vlogs and other ideas that don't quite make it onto the program, go on to my YouTube channel at Ronin JKD on YouTube and hook up with us there. Until we meet again, please keep your gloves up.